Let's be real, everyone has gone through that phase of thinking that they can make a AAA game. For me, it was going to be an open world dragon MMO with hundreds of species and in-depth flight mechanics. I downloaded Unity, brought an expensive mod to make coding more simple, and never touched it again. I remember back in middle school, this kid from my class was telling me about this GTA clone that he was going to code, and no lie, this man had 7 games planned. Yeah, the franchise really went downhill after that 5th installment. What I'm saying is, everyone thinks they have what it takes to make their dream game, but rarely does it ever get to the actual funding stage. The ARC project, however, broke this mold in the worst way possible. Known as one of Tumblr's biggest scams, the ARC project was a video game for queer people and people of color created by a Tumblr user accused of being abusive, racist, and sociopathic. So what the hell happened? Well, let's find out. Before we get into today's video, I'd just like to give a really quick thanks to Wingfox, today's sponsor. Wingfox is an online platform for artists and creatives with dozens of high quality tutorials on everything from 3D modeling to painting to concept design to film production and more, all taught by industry experts and veterans. The course that I took this time was Level Up Your Digital Painting Skills Beginner to Advanced, taught by Fishman, a senior concept designer. You'll learn how to make custom brushes and textures, use references and images to photo bash, paint amazing environmental effects, use light and shadow, and of course you'll paint lots of girls. Look at this art, this should be hung in museums. All of the courses on Wingfox are super affordable and accessible whether you're an experienced artist or a beginner looking to learn a new skill over quarantine. There's a discount link for Fishman's course down in the description, but you can also use my code ZZZ10 to get 10% off any course on Wingfox. Once again, that's ZZZ10. Thank you so much to Wingfox for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the story of the ARC project. It began on Tumblr with a simple idea, a 3D action-adventure role-playing game for queer people and people of color. The game would be a quote bash 'em up with unique mechanics and would feature characters from many different ethnic backgrounds, religions, and sexualities. The story is pretty vague, something about a deity and reincarnation, but with some refining it could be a cool concept, and Tumblr agreed. This was back in 2012, way before Life is Strange, Miles Morales, Far Cry 9. Okay, so we're not living through some golden age of diverse media, but we're at least taking steps towards it. There was definitely less of a conversation and push for games like this back in 2012, so a project like this was appealing, especially to the audience on Tumblr at the time. The ARC project made a development blog on Tumblr where the creator, Riley, would talk about their ideas, answer asks, and discuss the game with fans. Now, the creator is sometimes listed as Riley, Kia, Aaron, which makes it sound like one person, but it was actually 3 people. Together, Aaron and Kia formed Rose Gold, an indie game development team previously known as Kinu Games. Rose Gold supposedly had extensive experience with writing and 2D game development, so they were a good asset for Riley's project. But you've read the title of this video and you know how the story goes. The project was a scam, everyone involved was super shady, and the entire thing was a bizarre train wreck from start to finish. Before we cover the infamous $10,000 Indiegogo campaign that scammed thousands of dollars out of its backers, let's explore some of the weirder aspects of the project outside of the campaign. Firstly, the plot and game mechanics of the ARC project are never mentioned outside of some vague, yeah, I'm thinking about maybe putting this mechanic in the game kind of posts. This is a recurring theme throughout the entire project. It's labeled as a game, but Riley can never seem to give a definitive plot summary or explanation as to how they want the game to play. The game is little more than just an idea with a few pieces of art attached. Will we have a summary of the game's plot out anytime soon? We're holding the plot until the script is complete to avoid problems, but we'll give occasional tidbits here and there. Imagine EA pitching their game and the executives are like, oh, so what's your game about? And the developers are like, oh, sorry, we haven't finished writing every single line of dialogue for every character and NPC, so we can't give you a brief summary of the general plot, sorry. But I mean, these are the guys that made G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra and WWE Backstage Assault, so they probably get away with it. Will there be any non-conventionally attractive characters? There are black characters, masculine Asian characters, and trans women, as well as obviously disabled characters and fat ones. These sorts of people in real life are largely not considered conventionally attractive. What? Gender identities include binary and non-binary identities, and sexualities go from gay to straight to aromantic and asexual. As the game does have a story outside of the queer aspect, again, these might not be obvious, then again it also might. And since the game takes place in a fantasy world, the exact terms won't be used either. Firstly, you can't have it both ways. In this post, Riley is trying to cater to both people who don't want the game to revolve around their identity and people who do. Secondly, the exact terms won't be used, so like, cause it's a fantasy world, you can't say the word gay? Why? It is going around that because we chose Indiegogo upon a suggestion which allows us to at least receive any money that is donated prior to reaching our goal, that we plan to scam everyone out of their money. First, I think this will be a pretty terrible way to try and get a lot of money. Illness scams tend to cost just as much and tend to do better. This is a fucking weird thing to say, dude. You idiots, if I was gonna scam people out of money, I would have pretended to have cancer. Let's also touch on these guys for a second. Rose Gold, the experienced writers and game developers, were a large part of the project and were the only other contributors to be specifically named aside from Riley themselves. Like, they were name dropped quite a lot on the Tumblr blog, so you'd expect some pretty high quality work from them, right? On their now defunct YouTube channel, Rose Gold Games, we can actually see a few demos of one of their games, Mitsumata. Yeah, these are the same people that want over $100,000 for their video game. These are good demos and they demonstrate a great understanding of the fundamentals, but you need more than an understanding of the fundamentals to co-produce a $100,000 video game. After about a month or so of posting on this blog, in January 2012, Riley would start the aforementioned Indiegogo campaign, which turned out to be a disastrous scam of epic proportions. Let's take a look. Now, this Indiegogo was bizarre, to say the least. Follow the story of a deity bored with life among the gods who leaves to find a purpose in life. Reincarnate your deity onto numerous worlds, live through the lives of others, and gain life experience. But watch your god energy, you need a lot of it to continue your astral journey. Fight monsters only you can see, sometimes around very particular civilians who refuse to get the heck out of your way. And most of all, see a game and a story that the big wigs refuse to give. You're really gonna drop the term god energy and not explain what the hell that is. There are clearly two main characters. I know this because they provided about 50 fucking images of them, so why are there no descriptions? Keep in mind that this is the only explanation of the story that we get in the entire project, this one tiny paragraph which explains nothing. Like I said, it's a recurring theme with this project. Now, in a typical video game crowdfunding campaign, you'd include a video showing some animation tests or a rudimentary game build alongside some concept art and maybe some talking heads with the developers and artists. Wanna know what the ARC project had? It had 3 concept images and a bunch of fan art. The funniest shit is that they included this image, and then they also included an identical image, but in this one the characters are whitewashed. They also included these images and then the first draft sketches of the images. Just why? That question was rhetorical because I'm about to tell you exactly why. I'm gonna put all the reasons that this Indiegogo was shady as hell in a bullet point list because if I explained it all in detail, it would take hours. Number 1, the lack of any environmental, item, creature, NPC, or UI concepts. Typically in a game production, you're gonna have mood boards and general idea concepts like this before you fully design the characters. It's like if The Last of Us pitched their game like this. 2, the lack of any game footage, demos, or even rudimentary screenshots. A game in the funding stage doesn't have to have a prototype yet, but you need to at least show evidence that you have programmers or coders on board who can, you know, actually make the game. Number 3, want to know more about gameplay, engine, and the like? Why, yes, I do. Oh wait, it's just a Tumblr FAQ with 1 line of relevant information. The game will be programmed in Unity. Oh, wonderful. Number 4, the project's dependence on diversity is a selling point. I'm all for diversity in games, but this project was pandering in the most obvious and shameful way. They had no gameplay and barely any concept art or story, so their whole campaign hinged on the game being diverse. Diversity is definitely a valid selling point when you have a game to sell. When working on a $100,000 game, the gameplay has to come first. You can't just virtue signal and wait for the money to roll in. Number 5, the dodgy monetary goal. Their plan was basically to break the project into sections and make separate campaigns for each section. Let me break it down for you, and and try to keep up. Firstly, $3,900 for character concepts. This Indiegogo campaign that we're reading now is the character concept campaign, go figure. Then $8,200 for environmental concepts and $5,000 for monster concepts. Now programming is around $40,000, 3D models are $6,900, which frankly I find hard to believe. They want to make 25 more monster concepts for $10,000, they want $12,000 for animation, $2,000 for UI design, and $16,000 for environmental design. Last of all, $8,000 for item design, totaling up to an estimated over $100,000, but also, you know, it could actually be over double that price, but you know, being accurate about that kind of thing isn't important or anything. So yeah, aside from the ridiculous price estimates, from what I could tell, Riley was planning on making, at minimum, 8 separate Indiegogo campaigns for this project. The worst part about this Indiegogo? They reached their goal. Yeah, believe it or not, these clowns reached their goal 10 days after the campaign launched. A campaign for a AAA tier game which was nothing but an idea with a few pieces of art attached to it got over 6,000 USD, double what their original goal was. And the worst part of the worst part? They specifically chose Indiegogo because it allows you to keep all the money even if you don't reach your goal. Yeah, this isn't a Miss Officer and Mr. Truffles situation where it was nearly a scam. Riley actually got the $6,000 and it's never been seen again. What kind of person would do this? Who would claim to be this woke savior of minorities doing this amazing deed for the game industry before scamming hundreds of queer and POC supporters out of their money? We need to talk about Riley. It turns out that Riley was not an aspiring indie game developer, but a notorious Tumblr user who was infamous for their homophobia, volatile, hateful behavior, and racism. By all accounts, Riley was an offensive, nasty, and hateful user, and luckily there's plenty of evidence of it. They called Chinese people garbage and then claimed that a native woman was a cracker before calling all the people giving them backlash colonizer garbage. They wrote that women of color don't automatically deserve their respect, despite constantly using their status as a person of color as a shield against criticism and an excuse to harass others. They also wrote that women of color need to show they aren't oppressors first, even though Riley themselves often bullied and policed women of color. In reference to East Asians, called them white-loving pale yellow sacks of crap. On a post by a Japanese person discussing the misuse of the word kawaii, Riley wrote that they were, quote, really angry at Asians reblogging this, and derailed the conversation to talk about Asians stealing and mocking the shit out of black culture. They ended the post by saying, quote, fuck the Japanese and fuck you. They frequently spouted hatred towards black men. In a post about a black trans man, Riley responded, sounds like black man bullshit. They have multiple posts calling black men terrifying, and in an interaction with a black man called him an ashy-dicked piece of straight trash and claimed that black men are the leading cause in abuse and harm towards black women. In response to a black man complaining that the main character in the ARC project wasn't dating a black man, Riley wrote, I purposely canned all black men out of ARC entirely because black men are garbage and shit, and I'd rather put white people in my shit than y'all because white people have more sense than y'all in regards to black girls and queers. From that bitch who will make sure the only black person in ARC with a penis isn't a man. Identify with that, fuckers. Lastly, they told a Native American woman to, quote, pass the white dick, which is incredibly offensive and racist. When the woman took offense to this and told Riley that she had a family history of sexual abuse at the hands of white men, Riley responded, I don't care about you or your problems. So you know, this person was really qualified to make a game for people of color. I'm not even gonna get into all the other shit that Riley got into, but to make a long story short, they doxed and harassed a 17-year-old, doxed another Tumblr user after that, fetishized Asian culture, frequently used this slur in a malicious way to target other people of color, and often told people to go die or called them this slur. After hearing all that, you're probably thinking, wow, that's terrible. How did this project ever get off the ground? And also, what happened after the Indiegogo campaign? And now you're probably thinking, how the hell did she know what I was thinking? And now you're thinking, they know what I'm thinking. Anyway, let's move on to the next section. So you're probably wondering what happened after the campaign. Riley, of course, got away scot-free with the $6,525, though where the money went is up for debate. In the months following the successful campaign, the ARC project began to post more fleshed out concepts as promised. Primarily characters, but some really beautiful environmental and weapon concept art too. They even produced the first and only 3D model for the project with an infamous 1-second run cycle which wouldn't loop back in 2012 Tumblr, so it was almost impossible to see. So it's pretty clear that Riley didn't pocket the entire $6,000, but it's heavily assumed that a large chunk of it went directly into their bank account. Throughout the entirety of 2012, the blog was kept up to date and the money seemed to be going where it was supposed to be going. However, updates began to slow, going from upwards of 20 posts per month to 3 or 4 in the early months of 2013. Keep in mind at this point that fans and backers of the project had been strung along for over a year at this point, with frankly very little to show for all the money and time that had been invested in the project. A post in September of 2013, nearly 2 years after the project's inception, assured followers that the project wasn't dead and they were working on refining their ideas for gameplay as well as writing the script. This post also noted that they were planning a second fundraising campaign. I've seen multiple people claim that a second and even third campaign actually went up, but this is most likely false as no record of these exist, and this post would be the final mention on the topic. This mini update was the last post on the ARC project blog. In the following months, the project would occasionally reblog other crowdfunding campaigns and donation posts until it stopped for good in August of 2014. The blog hasn't been updated in over 6 years, though curiously it remains up despite the fact that Riley deleted their personal blog during the scandal. The project didn't exactly go out with a bang, it fizzled out with fans and supporters gradually coming to realize that the project was a scam and they would not be getting refunds. The project went radio silent and so did Riley. But in 2016, they came back with a new project. Yeah, believe it or not, they actually tried to crowdfund another game after the ARC project. Brave. The project was called Resync and by all accounts was pretty much an Undertale clone. It's hard to find much information on this since the GoFundMe and development blog were deleted, though Riley was supposedly asking for 10,000 USD to make a demo for the game before they made another campaign to fund the full game. Yeah, $10,000 for a demo of this. It's weird that they needed all that money because in a post from 2016 they claimed that they made 6 figures a year and lived in an apartment with 16-foot high ceilings, a pool, a jacuzzi, and a loft. They also claimed that their high-paying job allowed them to work from home, offered 15 free classes a week, and paid for their travel expenses, not to mention the company they started with their friend which already had multiple paying clients. Whether you believe all of this or not is really up to you, but all this self-congratulating flexing of wealth after they stole $6,000 from people, it really doesn't sit right with me. On top of this, they had a pretty popular account on medium.com where they wrote a lot of essays on black and queer topics, including an article from 2016 titled The Scam, or How I Became a Programmer for Reals. How very twee. In the article, Riley denies the claims that they're a scam artist and goes off on this tangent about how people were expecting them to make Kingdom Hearts with brown people for $3,000, and how Patricia Hernandez from Kotaku is an idiot for asking what happened to the game. The article is incredibly aggressive and comes off as super condescending, using multiple strawman arguments and blaming basically everyone but themselves. They mention how other marginalized artists have been harassed, but has to add that they're less black, less queer, and less autistic, as if that's an okay thing to just say. They end the article with "fuck off and die in a fire." No, I'm kidding. Can you imagine though? They end it by saying, "To the haters, I know I'm too black, autistic, queer, and unapologetically so for you. Get over it and me." In my opinion, the scam article and the Resync project show that Riley has learned nothing and has refused to take responsibility for their actions. They continue to carelessly use crowdfunding for ridiculous half-baked projects and refuse to even apologize, instead labeling people as racist or homophobic when they actually had valid criticisms. Ultimately, as Riley has stated, the project was never intended as a scam in my opinion, but it certainly turned into one. A Tumblr user who once scolded companies for baiting POC and queer people and having poor representation ended up baiting POC and queer people before scamming them and turning out to be a huge racist and bully. The ARC project really has earned its place in the Tumblr Hall of Fame as one of the scummiest scams out there. Thank you so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!